Well, hello to all of you out there, wherever you may happen to be at the moment. You are listening to or watching or both Unstoppable Mindset, and I am your host, Michael Hingson, or you're welcome to call me Mike. That's okay. Either way is fine. Today we get to chat with Linda Bearman, who is a very knowledgeable and active voiceover person, and she has been in acting most of her life. And she's even going to be participating this year at the showcase for the radio enthusiasts of Puget Sound up in Washington on the 18th and 19th and 20th and 21st of September. And I'm sure she's going to tell us all about that. And if she does, I'm going to ask her, so she'll tell us. Anyway, yeah. So, Linda, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yes, thank you so much. This is fun. I'm looking forward to. Actually, now that you mention reps, I'm telling you, I am so looking forward to it. It is so much fun, and the group is I don't know, it's got sort of a family atmosphere, and it's just and the shows are fun,
Well,
funny, some of them.
some of them are, and it is fun. One of the things that I know I've talked with Walden Hughes about, and we've even talked about it here on the podcast, but one of the things we've talked about is we need to get a new generation of people who truly understand how to do voice acting and who can sound natural like the old actors did. And we've talked about things to do to make that happen. And one of the ideas that we have is that if people want to come on to reps and be performers for it, one of the things they're going to have to do is to actually listen to the originals of the shows that they're going to participate in, because the actors who really brought those shows to life knew what they were doing. And today we don't see nearly as much of that. So it will be pretty exciting if we can start to actually work to train more people how to do that, because people like you, Bill Ratner, and so many people have that experience of actually acting and being involved in shows, and you know what they're supposed to be. So we've got to get a new generation to make that happen, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And the timing, the timing for this discussion is perfect because audio drama is now starting to resurface. It's just becoming noticed, popular. I mean, it's very popular in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
with all the shows the BBC does or sponsors. And I'll give you an example. SOVIS, which is the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences, which is a nonprofit organization based in New York City. They help. They do a lot of coaching, and they're a wonderful organization for voiceover people. But every year they have a competition, if you will. Voice actors submit, commercials, they cover all kinds of genres and categories. And they are adding, for the first time this year, audio drama as one of their categories. So I think that's pretty exciting, and I think that's a start.
I agree. That's exciting that they're going to do that. Well, let's go back with you. Tell us kind of about the early Linda growing up and all that.
Oh my goodness.
That's always fun
Okay.
to do. Start at the beginning, you know?
Well, I was born in Austria. I was adopted when I was about 3 years old and immediately taken to Italy. I was adopted by American parents, and I grew up in Italy
What happened
and
to your
came to the
original
US.
parents?
Don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair.
No clue.
Okay.
Um, I grew up in partly in Verona, Italy. In fact, that was my very first acting experience was in Verona, Italy. And then I came to this country when I was about 11 years old and lived outside of Washington, D.C. I studied a lot, took a lot of acting classes. And then I found my way to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I didn't want to go to college.
That was
And
a
my dad,
hard way to make sure you didn't, sort of.
my dad was insistent that I get a degree. And I found this sweet little tiny private college in the middle of what we would consider back then nowhere. Now everyone knows about Santa Fe. But it was they had such an amazing theater program. They brought in a lot of famous people to teach, guest teach. So it was more of a conservatory. Yeah, it was definitely more of a conservatory.
Now, why do you say that?
In its atmosphere? Well, because of the people I studied under. You just don't find that normally in theater departments today. Yeah, I mean, at one point they brought out Patrick Stewart from the UK to teach for several weeks, and Maureen Stapleton, Gregory Peck. I mean, it just went on. And so I got a great training, I think. And
I'll bet when you were studying, Patrick Stewart never said warp factor 1, number 1.
Yeah, exactly. He was teaching Shakespeare.
That would have been fun to hear.
Mm-hmm. It was a remarkable experience for me.
My only true in the theater sense exposure to Shakespeare was in I think it was early in, when would it have been? It would have been in like relatively early 1977. I was staying with a friend in New York. I was working on a project for the National Federation of the Blind. And my friend said, let's go see a show on Broadway. And I said, what do you want to see? And he said, I want to go see Othello. And I said, okay. And I think I asked him, well, who's playing in it? Othello was being played by James Earl Jones, and Iago was being played by Christopher Plummer. What a show.
Wow.
I am telling you. And you know the story, you know what's going to happen in the end. And when they're falling on their swords, the whole audience just went, oh! It didn't matter that you knew the story. They were so powerful in their performances that everyone was just right there. It was incredible. I loved it.
I'm sure it was incredible. Both incredible actors.
But I got to admit, I never did hear James Earl Jones say to Iago, I am your father. You know, he didn't do that. So we were good. Oh gosh. No, it was it was absolutely a great performance.
Yep.
So anyway, so you studied in this conservatory environment.
Yes, and then I continued performing. And then I moved to Los Angeles and found myself working in production, television production, film. I worked in casting departments. And then I had the opportunity to work in a commercial talent agency in the voiceover department. And I had no clue what that meant. Not any clue. So I was introduced to voiceover there and fell in love with it and have stayed in love with it ever since.
Why?
Because it's storytelling. And I'm so drawn to storytelling. There are different forms of storytelling, obviously, different genres in the voiceover industry, but I think honestly, Michael, I was a bit of a theater snob. And when I went to LA, I thought, oh man, it's TV, movies. It's all about how you look. It doesn't require really a craft. And I was, that wasn't very nice of me, but I discovered when I was introduced to voiceover, I realized, oh my gosh, there really is a craft to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I appreciated it so much, and I still do.
So when were you doing all this? When did you start to work in voiceover?
Well, I started working in the voiceover industry in 1986.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, back in I got in right at the end of the era of the industry that was just this quiet little group of people that, people didn't know back then what voiceover was.
Mm-hmm.
And on camera actors, kind of looked down their noses. I mean, are you kidding? Do voiceover? Until they found out, oh my goodness, it only takes an hour maybe to record a spot, and it doesn't matter how I look. I can come in my jeans and sweatshirt, and and you get paid well. Heck, I'm gonna do it.
There you go.
But I had the luxury back then of working with some industry famous people right before Mel Blanc passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with him just barely. June Foray.
June Foray, Dawes Butler.
Oh yes, and Parley Bear,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of these names I know. Howard Duff. Those are names that are not recognizable in today's world.
Right.
But I also had the opportunity, and I'm very grateful for it, very briefly, to work with James Earl Jones on a Doritos spot audition. I worked with wonderful, wonderful actors. Then as the industry began to change and it became sort of quote unquote discovered, then of course more and more actors and then celebrities wanted to participate.
So how did it work? Was the voiceover basically when you were creating a movie, there was the photographing part, but then doing the voices, doing the dialogue was separate, and that's what you're talking about?
With in the movies, that would be referred to ADR and looping. If, for example, they needed to re-record some lines for whatever reason, maybe. Oh, yeah. Commercials. Yeah. We did, the agency that I worked for was heavy commercial. We did almost all commercial and animation.
And that's why there was voiceover, because you were doing a lot of animation, and that became if you will, the video part, but you still had to put the voices to all of that.
Well, actually, I was working as a talent agent, so I represented actors.
Got it.
That voiced for different cartoons or voiced for whatever commercials. Back in those days, we had a pool of actors that we represented. Producers or casting directors would contact the agents, and send over what we call breakdowns, which were audition notices. And the agents would actually cast amongst our talent that we represented. And we also had recording booths where we would direct the talent in their auditions, and then we would submit the auditions to the producers or the casting directors. Now all of that process is completely changed. It doesn't exist anymore. And it was a great way to work, because we had hands-on experience with our actors, so we really knew the product we were selling. If you don't,
Yeah.
yeah, it was great.
How has it changed?
Well, actors don't go into agents' offices anymore. And excuse me, had to get some water. Um, all voice actors are expected to have their own home recording studios, and they audition. They have to self-direct. They now have to be their own editors because they need to edit the audition that they submit. And so there's little human to human interaction.
Mm. It kind of makes sense though, because so much of the technicalities of doing it has become easier to do. You don't have to cut and splice tape anymore. You don't have to, as you say, do so much directing and so on, because it is, as long as the actor knows what they're doing, it is easy enough for them to do the recording at home and to edit, because the technology has become a lot simpler. Or it's at
There's
least it's become easier to use, and you don't need to be the most technically savvy wizard to do it.
That's true. There's definitely truth in that. I think that a lot of actors would rather just do what they love to do, and that is perform and not
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with the technical aspects. I hear that repeatedly with my own clientele, with on camera actors as well. They have to self tape at home now and submit. And they don't want, they want to just do what they
They want
love.
to do what they want to do, and they don't want to do all of that. So how do they get around that? Or they're just forced to do it, or is there now sort of an industry of people that help with that?
Well, I think there's a growing industry
Mm-hmm.
that will help in certain aspects, especially when it comes to the business side. In other words, voice actors now have to establish or create their own business. They have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. They can't sit back and wait for the phone to ring anymore. So much of the work that they're getting on their own, which means they need to know how to market. And there are companies that help with client relations management. Um, they have tools that are expected now, not just your voiceover demos, but you're expected to have a website, and your website better have some great, what is it, SEO
Yeah,
system? No, SOE system, system engine optimization,
yeah,
SEO.
SEO, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot. So there are, fragments of support, and that I think those parts of the industry are growing because it's needed.
Yeah, in a sense, growing is one way to put it, or coming back is another way to put it, because it's what you all used to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes it makes perfect sense that that part of the industry comes back, because you're right. People don't want to do all the technical stuff. It is easier. It is a lot more straightforward to do today. I can edit files and make them sound good. Whereas when I worked in radio years ago at KUCI was a horrible tape splicer, and I don't know whether everyone could always tell, but I could always tell when I came to a place where I had to splice tape together, because I'm not the neatest splicer. Now I use software that makes that very straightforward to do. And I appreciate that, but I also enjoy just doing what I like to do, which is things like the podcast as opposed to the back end stuff. But I know how to do it, and that helps me develop an appreciation for it.
That's great. And that you've got software to assist. And I think we need more of that. We need software programs in, I think, more so in the voiceover industry. to help the actor.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's probably one of the questions that you might consider the elephant in the room. What is AI going to do to all of this?
That's more like, what has AI done to this?
Okay.
AI has definitely taken a lot of what we call the low-hanging fruit, which are, small jobs, low-paying jobs, definitely impacted what's termed by many telephony, which are your telephone prompts. Um, it's taken quite a bit, and I think it will continue to, but at the same time, other doors are opening, other opportunities are opening. And I find it fascinating, just because I do a lot of research, that what I've read so far and what I've seen is that, according to advertising industry surveys, right now anyway, humans prefer to hear humans
Mm-hmm.
on commercials, not synthesized voices. So it's the focus now for myself as a coach. I'm a voiceover coach and mentor. The focus is heavily on being much more natural, real, bringing your personality into the read, no matter whether it's for a commercial for mayonnaise or it's an e-learning project for some company. It's about, they're looking for more of they're looking for you.
Yeah.
They're looking for the individual. They want to hear the individual, because that's the humanness. That's humanity we're talking about. And AI is able to duplicate emotions, but it doesn't know why. AI doesn't have life experiences to pull from. AI is not able to ad lib and improv. So there's heavy emphasis on improv and having that ability to improv with acting or actors.
I am sure there are those of the technology industry who say, but it's coming. And my response is no, not really, for very much the reasons that you stated. I'm on lists of people who get, trade, and deal with audiobooks, for example. And one of the things that I've heard time and time again is, if I just want to read something and I don't want to really get into it, like a nonfiction book, I have to read it. I can tolerate an artificial voice for that. But when it comes to reading mysteries, when it comes to reading fiction books where I want to really enjoy it, I absolutely do not want an AI reading of the book. I want a human reading, because it is so different. And I agree with that. I've listened to enough AI generated books, at least I've listened to parts of them, that there is a big difference. Will it change? It will somewhat change over time, but I think the things that you said are very true. There's more to it. It's not just the reading, it's the breathing, it is the absolute knowledge of how to do it and what you want it to sound like. And I think that that's going to be something that AI is a long way from really being able to do well.
Yeah, I think so too, Michael. I would have to agree with you. I think that AI will definitely
Hmm.
improve, become more sophisticated, but we humans have energy. And what's our voice? What's our sound? That is energy.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that that can be synthetically reproduced. I'm not a believer at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. Of course, I'm still back trying to figure out, and I am trying to picture James Earl Jones doing a Doritos commercial, but that's okay.
You know what? You remember that he was a stutterer.
Yeah.
So it took him a few a few tries because he had a tough time with the Doritos.
Hmm. But what a
And
voice.
he was a lovely, lovely man.
Was his commercial used?
No.
Oh, well, then I probably won't find it anywhere. But
No, I don't know who they ended up booking.
but what a voice overall. And I just don't think you're going to see AI in the reasonably near future truly be able to emulate that. And that's what it ultimately is it's emulating, it's it's trying to recreate it, but it's not the same as what a person would do.
True. It mimics. It's
Yeah.
able to mimic us, but it, as I said, doesn't have an understanding of why it's mimicking a certain emotion.
Yeah. What would you say are the things that people who want to break into the industry really need to know?
That it's not a fast buck. And you're not going to be I'm going to say this, you're not going to be a success overnight. It requires, people need to know it requires an investment, just as any other business requires an investment when it's a startup.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to know that you're going to be spending money on, number one, training, learning voiceover techniques, learning about the business, how the business functions. You're going to be spending money on building a home studio. You're going to then hopefully reach a point where you're going to spend money on a demo, let's say a commercial demo. This I always find quite fascinating and disturbing as well. Right now, 1 minute, let's say a minute 15 commercial demo, professionally produced, will cost anywhere from $1,700 to $5,000,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is nuts.
Yeah. Well,
But that's what it is. I think I would say to a person who's interested in voiceover that to be able to thrive in the industry, you need to absolutely have a passion for it.
would you also say that somebody who's going to be involved in this industry also really does need to learn to have some basic acting skills?
Very, very helpful at this
Mm-hmm.
point in time, yes. However, that being said, I do work with people that have never been trained. They're not, but you can learn
Right.
some basic acting fundamentals. And honestly, Michael, sometimes musicians have they kind of have a leaning towards voiceover. And that's for obvious reasons, that sort of rhythmic,
Mm-hmm.
uh, internal rhythmic thing they've got going on, as well as comedians sometimes do very well in voiceover. And, they've done improv.
But the thing is that when I talk about acting, and I'm not saying acting training in the formal sense, but you have to learn how to be enough of an actor to be able to project the kind of thing with your voice that whoever is funding the endeavor is looking for. You have to tell a story, as you would put it, with your voice, which in one way or another involves acting. Whether you're trained to do it, you still have to have some of that innate skill to be able to make that happen.
Absolutely. To be able
Yeah.
to bring a commercial or a story or a narration, whatever it is you're working on, to breathe life into it requires making an emotional connection to the story or to the message.
Mm-hmm.
And that does incorporate acting skills, whether you're trained or not.
Right. You still have to somehow develop the skills, and that's what I was getting at.
Yep.
Why is there such an increase? You've talked about it some, I think, but why is there a growing interest and a growing industry of audio drama?
Um, that's such a great question, and I'm not sure I know the answer to that other than I I'm not sure, except that people are drawn to audio
Hmm.
stories. Well, look at audiobooks. I mean, they just a few years ago, several years ago, just started booming.
Yeah,
Um, and they still are.
you
Uh,
have you have people reading them who draw you in, which is the point.
yes. Yes, imagination of the mind. Who
Absolutely.
was, yeah, and perhaps we need that. Maybe there's been too much visual. I don't know.
Yeah, it's time to get rid of TV and go back to audio.
I'm with you all the way on that. I agree. I love it.
I know that, it's so interesting. And I think Stan Freberg did this wonderful skit where he was talking about why radio. And the skit basically was they drained Lake Michigan, they filled it with whipped cream, and then an aircraft flew over and dropped a 10-ton maraschino cherry into Lake Michigan. And, you can't do that on television and get away with it. The
No,
imagination isn't there on television.
that is so true. Imagination is not there visually.
Mm-mm. One of my favorite science fiction movies is the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Leonard Nimoy and others redid it. The problem between the first and the second versions of the movie was that all of the stuff that was left to your imagination in the 1955 version of the movie was visually shown to you in the later movie, how the plants took over humans and all that. And the reality is it just took a dimension out of the movie, because in that original one where you didn't see any of that happening and suddenly you were confronted by it was just such a tremendous kind of effect. The imagination is so important, and we are moving away from it, which is too bad.
It's interesting because when I coach, I stress and work on imagination, and I refer to it as a muscle that must be flexed.
Hmm.
If you're if you're going to bring copy content to life, you've got to flex that muscle of imagination.
Yeah, and that is something that most of the radio actors in the old radio world did, and some of them still do very well. And they drew you in. I mean, when you listen to Matt Dillon, when you listen to William Conrad doing Gunsmoke on the radio, he clearly sounds like this big guy that nobody can beat. And it's a totally different image than James Arness on television. And for me, it's a real tough transition. I can do it, but still, I much more enjoy William Conrad doing the Matt Dillon role on radio. And I understand that visually he wouldn't have fit the part very well. That's fine. But from a standpoint of what he brought to the mind was incredible.
Right, right. I missed a lot of those radio shows, growing up in Europe. So a lot of these shows, I I would have loved to have grown up with, but I'm growing up with them now.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's really crucial to really deal with the imagination. I think it's so important to do that, because I think that the reality is that in radio then and now. I mean, I've also listened to, for example, Carl Amari, who did Twilight Zone, took all the scripts and made radio broadcasts of them, and generally did a pretty good job. Some of the TV shows, I think, really continued to translate better, but he did a really good job bringing all of those to radio, and it evoked some really good imagination highs, if you will.
Right. Yep. That
So
was
it's
one of
kind of
my
important.
favorites.
So you talked about some of the actors that you studied with and did master classes with and so on. Um, do you do you help coach any of the kind of more famous people today and help them in their voiceover efforts?
Not, no, I haven't recently. I have found that the demand, I guess, if you will, um, lies more with people that are just starting out or those that are in mid-career that need a boost, need
Mm,
to make some sort of adjustment because they're stuck. And that's common, I think, uh, especially when technology is moving so rapidly. And because our industry is in a seismic shift right now, um, and become global, and there's so many variables involved, but those are usually the folks that I work with. I've also found too, it's a kind of interesting and curious to me, is that I find that people are coming to me wanting to know more about how to handle the business or understand
mm,
the business. And because I was an agent for 20 years, I find that I'm teaching also how to think like an agent. It's a lot of them need that kind of help,
yeah.
even though they have
Mm,
perhaps have agency representation. Uh, but they're oftentimes in a situation where they're having to negotiate the job for themselves.
yeah.
It's not going through their agent.
They have to learn how to be an entrepreneur, a business person, and do all of that. And I appreciate that's where the industry is. I wonder if it will at some point move more the other way, where again agents are involved. That'll probably happen if too many people don't get decent deals and the studios or the management people try to rip them off. That's going to cause a change of some sort, I would think.
Yes. Now, I didn't catch the first part of your comment regarding agents. You think that the agents, that position will sort of become obsolete at some point?
No, I'm thinking it will go the other way, that in reality we don't have enough people who truly have that entrepreneurial skill, and maybe some of them are learning it. But the reality is that I know in part you're having to teach that, and some people get it and some people don't. So I'm not sure that agents are going to go away. I think that in reality, if if enough things happen, that industry will become relevant again, much more than it is today.
I think that if I had to guess, I would say that in the future there will be agencies that will close because they handle so many people. We're talking hundreds. Whereas managers typically handle maybe what, 12 to 25 people,
Mm-hmm.
tops 50.
Mm-hmm.
I think managers will, that part of the industry will grow. I think we will start seeing more managers and less agents.
But the managers will have to take on what today was, or in the past was probably more of a little bit more at least of a traditional agent role.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they have the time to help guide and, yes, have more time with the talent that they are handling or representing. I wonder also what's going to happen with casting directors. When there are so many online casting sites, will that change a casting director's job and position? I don't know.
Yeah. It remains to be seen, and it will be interesting to learn where all of that goes. But it's a fluid environment and will be for a while. Um, Maybe that's what we should get AI to do, is to become agents or managers. Let AI
There
do
we
it.
go.
Yeah, give it something to
There,
do.
you know what, Michael? You might have just hit on something right there, and that could go viral.
If it does, I want my cut.
Uh-huh.
but
Definitely.
but but the reality is that it is a very fluid industry, and understandably so. I know when the writers and so on were negotiating their contracts, the whole issue about AI was a big part of it. And I can appreciate that, because there's so many ways that people have been misusing AI, and misusing tools. But that's nothing new. We've done that all along the line. People misuse, and so we have to try to be creative enough to learn what people will try to misuse and put stops to it, I would think.
Well, we have an organization in the voiceover industry that is really remarkable, called NAVA, National Association of Voice Actors, and they have made huge, huge progress in bringing attention to creating guardrails, hopefully, for voice actors, because voice actors' voices have been stolen,
Mm-hmm.
repurposed, cloned, and there's been a lot of lawsuits, as you probably know. And they're working with Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA, SAG-AFTRA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, all I can say is your voice is a licensed asset as a voiceover talent.
Right.
And it
And
only takes 3 seconds of your voice to be cloned and, messed with, repurposed, used.
yeah, and too many people do some of that, but you put it very well. It's still your voice, and you should have the right to control what happens to your voice.
Exactly. You should have the ability to, uh, for consent, for, fair payment.
Mm-hmm.
And, you need to know if is there the potential of a third party getting involved here? But the wonderful thing one of the great things about Nava is they've created writers, that voice actors can use with their contracts
Mm.
on jobs.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of progress. They're really pioneering and forging ahead. They're an amazing organization.
Well, technology is evolving in so many ways and so fast that it is important that there be people who keep up with that and who deal with it in some manner. Because the fact of the matter is that people are going to continue to play games, and too many people try to cut corners. And it's not only is it so unfair, but when they do that, in reality, they're diminishing the whole business and they're diminishing the product, because, as we pointed out, you and I discussing this earlier, the reality is you're not going to get the same thing totally from an artificial voice today.
Mm-mm. No. And this goes for all creatives. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just voiceover, as you know. We're talking writers, artists, anybody in the creative world. We're very, very susceptible to fraud, unfortunately.
I think there is room for AI, things like Chat GPT. I use that when I create, when I write, but I use it in part to get ideas, and I use it in part to get some wording ideas, but it's still, by the time it's all done, is what I write and my creation, and what the computer has created is a part of it, but it's not the main part of it, because it's not going to sound like me. And I think that's still a process. It's a long ways away. And even if you really get it to sound like you, it sounds like you today, you gain new experiences and you're different again.
That's so true. Yeah, absolutely. I
So,
avoid chat GBT and I'm so stubborn, but I'm sure I will use it just as a guideline
yeah,
if I'm in a rush, but I avoid it.
I've gotten some good ideas from it, but that's what I've gotten, are ideas, not a final document by any means. So I've gotten some good thoughts and ideas from it, and I think that's fine. I think that we should use all the tools that are at our disposal to help us create, but we're still the ones that have to do the creating.
Right. My hope with AI is that it will assist us in solving climate change, in helping us, uh, helping the medical health industry in terms of curing diseases or
Mm-hmm.
getting us on. There are some very positive places that AI is working in, and those are the areas that I hope AI can make a big difference in our lives.
I heard a news report. I've actually heard several that talk about the whole COVID vaccination process and the vaccines that have been developed. And they said that in that regard, AI did in a few days what would have taken us years to be able to do. But AI added a dimension to it, and it worked. And that's fine.
I think I read the same article. I did hear that as well. And I thought, wow, how cool is that
Yeah.
to come up with drug, you know, I don't know, recipes um, in hours instead of years.
Yeah. So there is certainly room for technological advances, such as the whole concept of AI, but still, they're not human, and I'm of the opinion that they won't be. There are those that say that the time is going to come when human brains and computers will be connected and married together. I'm not convinced of that, but we'll see. But even so, the reality is that the human brain is the creative part of any of that. And that's a dimension I haven't seen anyone be able to duplicate, nor do I expect to.
No, no.
So, how did you get involved with reps originally?
Well, the wonderful Beverly Washburn, sweetheart that she is. For those that don't know, Beverly was the little girl in Old Yeller, and gosh, she has over 500 credits to her
She was
name.
on
And
Jack Benny radio shows or television
y-
shows, radio shows a little bit.
yep. So Beverly and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and then Beverly told me about reps, and I said, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to do that so badly." So she got me involved and introduced me to Walden, and there we are. I'm a member, and I
We've
love it.
had we've had Walden on the podcast a couple times, which is a lot of fun, and John and Larry Gassman, and someone else Bill Radner.
Bill Radner. I was one of his voiceover agents back in the day. Yeah,
And
yeah, good man.
I understand he's going to be up at, well, so in later in September, starting on the 18th, reps will be having conducting what they call their showcase, where they're going to do recreations of, I think it's 18 different shows. I wish I could be there, but I'm going to be speaking elsewhere, so I won't be able to be there. One of my favorite shows was one I was going to do, which is Richard Diamond, Private Detective. But because I can't be there to play Richard Diamond or Dick Powell, we're going to do it another time. But that's okay. We'll do it.
I can't wait to see Bill. I have not seen Bill. I've spoken to him, communicated with Bill, but we have not seen each other since probably, I'm guessing, 1991,
Oh my gosh,
something like that.
34 years.
Yeah.
And you probably both look the same.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I wish.
So what
Maybe that's something AI can do.
There you go. What are some of the characters that you're going to play in the rep showcase?
You know, you caught me off guard here. I know that I'm sitting on Albert's lap, so that's a small part in one of the Couple Next Door
Couple
shows.
Next Door, right?
And then Sam Spade. Mrs. Ooh, that's going to be fun. That's Mrs. Olson. You know Mrs. Olson? She's the one who her mother's a drunk basically, and she's not a real favorable character, but I'm pretty sure it's Sam Spade, Mrs. Olson. But that'll be a fun character because she's good inside. She just didn't have a very good upbringing. So
Now, I think you mentioned yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
No, did I?
You did earlier. Well, I know that's Beverly's favorite.
You're right.
Beverly wanted to do yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and I think that's why it's happening. That'll be fun.
Yes, I am in Johnny Dollar, and maybe that's the character. Is there a Mrs. Olson in Johnny Dollar? I haven't done all my homework yet.
I have to go check. I'm not sure. It's possible. Not a regular, but I'll have to go look.
You know what? It is. You're right. It is Johnny Dollar because Beverly is playing the mother who's, as I said, sketchy, petty criminal, drunk. That's the part Beverly's playing. And Mrs. Olson is the daughter. So yeah, you're right. It's Johnny Dollar.
Well, that'll be fun. I did I think my first reps recreation was being part of a Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. I was George Foreman, the insurance guy who called Johnny.
Oh, yeah. That's fun. A good part.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. And I also enjoy Hall of Ivy.
Halls of Ivy with Ronald Coleman.
Uh-huh. That's good. These are fun, and I cannot believe that Bill Ratner and I are not in one show together.
Oh,
I know.
Boo-hoo. For anyone who is interested, these all start on the 18th. They will be broadcast on yesterdayyusa.net, and so you can listen to them. And if you're in the Washington area, you can go to see this live for free. One of the things that Walden has brought to reps, which I think is really great, is that he's gotten a number of grants that have allowed things like being able to not charge for people to come in and see the shows live to actually happen. So people can go see them actually performed live, which will be fun. One of these days, we'll have enough people in an audience to maybe do some of the comedy shows and have audiences give big time laughter at what we do. Last time when I was involved, which was last year. We did a Phil Harris and Alice Faye show, but it's not the same without the audience.
Right. It's true. With the audience, you've got that give and take,
Mm-hmm.
and you can feel that give and take of energy and fun. I'm dying to find out what you and Walden have talked about in terms of cultivating and generating the new generation um, of voice actors for or audio drama.
We both have been involved in listening to a number of people who've have acted in recreations, and they don't sound at all like the the people who originally performed the shows. And I suppose you can say that's a plus and a minus. But in general, what it's come down to is people have put interpretations on the characters that they portray that just make no sense in the light of the scripts. And it is something that we need to work on, because the reality is that back when these were originally performed, there was a lot of work to bring the right characters to, or right actors to portray characters and make the voices and the people sound realistic enough to draw people in. And so we really need to find ways to get people to be more understanding and cognizant of what radio sounds like. And I've heard a few shows, not reps, but newer creations of radio programs where the actors just sound really stiff, because they're not into the characters. They're not into the characters at all.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to send you a clip. No, I should say it's a 10-minute episode. I promise I'm going to send it to you. It's a new group that's formed, and it's the first episode, and I would love to send it to you and have you take a listen to it and get your
Sure.
feedback.
Sure. Would love to.
Yeah.
I have been listening every week to the Lemon Abner Society's audio comics of Lemon Abner with Donnie Pitchford and the folks. They do a pretty good job of actually sounding pretty natural. They also try to sound directly like Lemon Abner, and they can't totally do it, but they've got the intonations down pretty well. So they're fun to listen to.
Good. Well, I hope that you have a fantastic time in Texas.
That's the plan. And talking about September 11th and things like that, and then I'll go back to the room and I will listen to shows. So it'll work out okay.
Well, we're going to miss you.
Well, I'll miss all of you too, but it'll be fun, and we will have chances to do it together again. So what kind of final things would you like to say to people about all of this? What are your final thoughts that you want to convey?
Just to be kind to each other as a general note. Just follow your passion. If voiceover or audio drama is your passion, follow it. Trust. And yeah, let's be kind to each other.
There you go. You can't do better than that. I hope more people will do that. We're seeing way too much not of that, and I think it's important that people learn more to love, learn more to listen, and learn more to how to be kind to each other. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you for listening and being here with us today. Love to get your thoughts. Feel free to email me, Michael H.I. at accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com. And Linda, if people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
They could direct message me on LinkedIn.
What's your LinkedIn name? How do they find you on LinkedIn?
Under my name, Linda Bearman.
Can you spell that just to play safe?
Yes, Linda, and the last name B as in boy, EARMAN. It's just like
Okay.
bear and man.
Yep.
And if not, they could text me at area code 435-513-0009. And if they do decide to text me, they must use your name, or at least a portion of your name, as the code.
That way you'll know. And again, my name is
Exactly.
Mike Hingson, Hingson. I'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts about today. Wherever you're observing this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. We value that highly and love it if you reach out to Linda. And of course, all of you, and Linda, you as well, if you know anyone who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, who you think would be able to come on and tell their story, I would appreciate introductions. We value that very highly. But again, for now, Linda, I just want to thank you for being here. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm glad you were here and we got to spend time together.
I am too, Michael. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.